Everything needs its own fuel. Everything requires its own fuel. If something's going to happen, it needs something to nourish it, something to animate it, something that gives it life, its own fuel. The Buddha talks about extensively about the nourishments or nutriments in English, excuse me, which he calls ahara. But the most important nourishment, the most important fuel that we see talked about, addressed, discovered, uncovered throughout this dispensation of Lord Buddha's is not listed necessarily among the four aharas, but one that is always there in everything we say, we do, we think, we believe, and that is attention. Without attention, nothing happens. Nothing. Attention is being given to something in order for it to take place, to exist, to be happening. So far, I've discussed the value of considering the value of contact that is taking place in all the six sense spheres: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, as being the very quintessential difference between the Dhamma and everything else, the 62 views of which we started covering, officially we started covering last week. Today happens to be the third week of the Brahmajāla Sutta. But I wanted to bring the attention and focus it on this thing that oftentimes is ignored. What are belief systems? What are wrong views that we keep talking about? Or just belief systems, any, without attention being given to them. So without attention, nothing happens. Hence, the fuel is attention. So if we can just recall that during the day, when we're struggling with some aspect of life, maybe it's a hindrance, maybe it's an obstacle, emotional hurdle, a certain type of reaction which we're not very happy about in us, that manifests when certain conditions occur. In the presence of certain conditions, that side of us shows up which we're not very happy about. I would like to handle the situation better, but I can't seem to get a handle on it. Why? Or there's the internal fighting going on. Something that reoccurs. It's like almost cyclical. It's a pattern. Patterns don't exist without attention being given to them. We never consider that. We always think of ourselves being like in the victim seat. Oh, this is happening to me, Bhante. This is happening to us. No. Attention has to be granted by us in order for something to keep happening to us. I realized this when I began to realize this, let me correct that statement, when I was 8 years old, when I had a severe case of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. as a result of the PTSD that I had developed given the traumatic injuries I faced in Lebanon during war. It was painful. Every day I had my own rituals that I had to do. Washing of the hands was the easiest part, which was torturous. My parents would sit down to eat, and they would be almost done when I would finish counting appropriately how many times I had actually washed my hands. Was it the right count? Arbitrary number, by the way. I didn't realize how much attention I was granting it, and all of a sudden, and if I hadn't done that, if I didn't walk a certain way in the hallway, and then enter into the dining area to eat with them, it would all be wrong. This was painful. But there was one author of this debacle, the mind that was giving it attention. Every time you're trying to struggle to fall asleep and you can't because of some thoughts, some difficulty, insomnia, this and that, and you're fighting. You're fighting. Whom are you fighting with? Who is it that this battle is taking place with? Us. It's one fist against another, but they both belong to the same person in this case. Attention, that's the key. So if there's any challenge that we are facing, something we want to overcome in any area of our lives, spiritual practice especially, we need to reevaluate our commitment in giving attention to something that shouldn't be given any attention to. This is why sati is extremely important, to look at, okay, what are some of the things that I'm doing? What am I repeating here? So patterns. Wrong views are authentication of patterns. It's ritualizing or officiating a wrong mode of behavior by granting it a special status, calling it a creed, calling it a view, calling it a way of thinking, philosophy. So last week we talked about the two. Beginning umbrella wrong views, where we saw the eternal view, eternalist view. There were four. And then we saw the quasi, semi-eternal, where certain individuals having attained to levels of concentration, they were able to look back and they saw, oh, I was such and such a God, I was such and such a thing, and there were better ones for me. Oh, so they are the superior being, so we are the subordinate. Oh, so there's a difference. So there's a God, there's a me. I am not that eternal. They are, however, all based on wrong view, deductions, and in fact, conjectures and assumptions based on presumptions. Basically not getting the whole picture, but then formulating a whole theory around it. Just like we come up with our own theories on a day-to-day basis without questioning, where am I giving my attention to? What is getting my attention? Most of my energy is going where? When individuals showed up in therapy sessions, and they would say, I don't have enough time, doc, to help me. Can you give me any, like few more hours in the day? I said, sorry, you have 24. Nobody's been able to figure out how to add, but the quality we can change. The quantity we can't, but the quality of the hour we can. So let's sit down and do a pie chart of where the energy is going. Tell me about your activities. Oh, I do this. So we would make a graph or a pie chart, we could see there's a big chunk of time being wasted here doing something that is not constructive at all. And the person tells me this. Now the attention is going into the right areas of one's life. They are being able to scrutinize properly. So this is what the Buddha is doing here. He is scrutinizing. He's helping the bhikkhus to look at, question properly the views that were prevalent at the time as they are today, under different names, under different cultures, but essentially they're the same. So today we're going to continue, this being the third week, as I mentioned, of Brahmajāla Sutta from the Digha Nikaya, long discourses, Sutta number 1. The all-encompassing net of wrong views. So this is the third group of wrong views that has to do with the past, right? The 18 wrong views, so we're in them. Today we're going to be covering wrong views number 9 to 12. We're going to begin from there. So my hope is we can perhaps cover more area today. So this one in Pali is Antanantavada, existence or the cosmos being finite or infinite, depending on who's discussing it or believing in it. So let's dig in. This is Lord Buddha again continuing the instruction to the bhikkhus. Bhikkhus, there are recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins who assert and believe in the premise that existence or the cosmos as such is finite or infinite. So to point out their conclusion that existence of the cosmos is finite or infinite, they use the following 4 premises as their sources or frames of reference. Now, what are these 4 frames of reference? Here, bhikkhus, a certain recluse, religious practitioner, or Brahmin, through diligent effort and with persistent resoluteness, focuses his attention by concentrating his mind. Thus, he attains to a level of concentration that settles his heart into a state of collectedness, whereby he is then able to experience existence or the cosmos as being finite and limited in its dimensions. Later, as a result of his discovery through his meditation, he makes the following assertion. Truly, existence and this entire cosmos is finite and limited in its dimensions. And what is my proof to be saying this? It is because through diligent effort and with persistent resoluteness, when I focus my attention and become well concentrated, as my heart settles into a level of collectedness, basically some type of samadhi, I am then able to experience existence and the cosmos as finite and limited in its dimensions. Therefore, it is because of knowing this for a fact that I declare, truly existence and this entire cosmos is finite and limited in its dimensions. This, bhikkhus, is therefore the first of 4 premises or frames of reference that some recluses, religious practitioners, etc., use to point out that existence or the cosmos as such is finite or infinite, upon which they rely as their source or frame of reference. And what, bhikkhus, is the second? I'm paraphrasing some of the repetition sections. By the way, the sutta has been uploaded, so it's in full. I think all 67 pages of it in PDF. It's on the website, so now it's available, so you can print it out, you can use it as a reference, and I highly encourage you take your time with it. So what is the second frame of reference? Lord Buddha continues. Here, bhikkhus, a certain recluse, religious practitioner, or Brahmin, through diligent effort and with persistent resoluteness, he also goes into samadhi, whereby he is able to experience existence or the cosmos as being infinite and boundless in its dimensions. So this one is the opposite. Conclusion has been reached. Later, as a result of his discovery through his meditation, he makes the following assertion. Truly, existence and this entire cosmos is infinite or infinite and boundless in its dimensions. And what is my proof in saying this? Because he says, in my meditation, I have discovered this to be the case for a fact. Hence, I declare, truly existence and this entire cosmos is infinite and boundless in its dimensions. Therefore, the Buddha continues, this is therefore the second of four premises that they use to point out that existence or cosmos as such is finite or infinite. And what bhikkhus is the third frame of reference that they use, such recluses and practitioners use, to conclude that the existence or cosmos is either finite or infinite. Here, bhikkhus, a certain recluse or Brahmin, through diligent effort and with persistent resoluteness, focuses his attention, goes into samadhi, and is able to experience existence or the cosmos as finite and limited in its vertical axis, going up, while infinite and boundless in its horizontal axis. I've actually met instructors in my spiritual journey, a teacher from Japan, actually, who is a priest in a specific tradition. He gave me that description, how he understands the universe to be. And, you know, decades later, I found in the sutta, I was like, wow, they actually believe that, because, again, this is the person's experience of it. But it's not the full picture. The mind likes to conclude. Assumptions are that. But it's like looking at a small piece from a big jigsaw puzzle and concluding that that piece is the whole picture. Anyhow, let's move on. Later, as a result of his discovery through his meditation, he makes the following assertion. Truly, existence and this entire cosmos is both finite and infinite in its dimensions, which is why all those recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins who claim that existence or the cosmos is finite and limited in its dimensions are terribly wrong. So this is the person who's saying, all those who categorically state that the universe is finite, they're completely wrong. Now he's going to say, all those who believe that the universe is infinite, they're wrong too, because it's a combination of both. This is what the person believes. He says, because truly existence and this entire cosmos is both finite and infinite in its dimensions. And what is my proof to be saying this? It is because through diligent effort and persistent resoluteness in my practice of meditation, I have reached that conclusion, basically, that it is limited in its vertical axis, while infinite and boundless in its horizontal axis. This, therefore, is the third of four premises or frames of reference that some recluses use. And what is the fourth frame of reference? Here, bhikkhus, a certain recluse, religious practitioner, or Brahmin, through the application of his rational thinking, reasons out by logical means as he reaches a conclusion, as a result of a series of exhaustive investigations of himself and the world. Given his deductions from the logical examinations gathered, he then comes out with the declaration. Existence or the cosmos is in fact neither finite or infinite, which is why all those recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins who claim that existence or the cosmos is finite and limited in its dimensions are terribly wrong. The same goes for all those others who claim the opposite by stating that existence or the cosmos is infinite and boundless in its dimensions, as they too are mistaken. So are those who claim that existence or the cosmos is both finite and infinite, because they too are mistaken. Bhikkhus, truly existence, it says, because truly existence and this entire cosmos is neither finite or infinite in its dimension. This is the fourth person's position. These are all tetralemmas. These are all games that get a person nowhere in getting the full picture. But we have this deep, deep desire to get the whole picture. But we also have restlessness. We have a restless heart, a restless mind. And we have this thing that runs the whole machine that's called conceit in us. Asmimana, these are my views. These are my conclusions. So I have to defend that. Remember last week and the week before, we were talking about the fear of the loss of a self So the beings will come up with different techniques, different views to defend the existence, air quotes, the existence of a self, the existence of a me, the existence of a I. And that's what we have in religions, essentially. In philosophies, in universities, when you have, or political science, or any type of movement that comes out and says, this is supposed to be this is what we believe. Now, that is conceit in action. Some are louder than others, of course. And that's what you have, a zoo in the world. That's what Lord Buddha calls human beings, crazy. He just calls it, human beings are just, bunch of crazy people running around. Everybody's tooting their own horn. Everybody's trying to explain to the other why they are right, when the whole premise is wrong. So the 62 views, it doesn't mean that the world has only 62 views. No, by the way, in case you're wondering. No, the 62 views covers the whole spectrum of different views. You might have a million or a billion different views, but you can narrow them down into 62. And we are on the third group of 4 now from those 62. This then, because is the fourth of 4 premises or frames of reference. Therefore, whatever recluses, religious practitioners, or Brahmins who assert and believe in the premise that existence as such is eternal, along with the self with which they identify, as they point out the finite or infinite nature of existence or the cosmos, they all would be using or relying on one or another of these 4 premises as their sources or frames of reference. That is so because outside of these 4 frames of reference, there can be none. So today, if you're speaking with an astrophysicist or a quantum physicist about does the existence, does the universe have a finish line? Is there a boundary? Some will say, we think there might be. Some will present to you a map of the a microwave that they were able to generate through countless calculations. So they have a map of the cosmos, let's say. And they will say, we don't know beyond this boundary what exists here, what exists there. Everybody has their own opinions based on whatever source of data. So far, that's what we saw, including the yogis, who were essentially, for all intents and purposes, were also using their own set of data through the jhanas, through the meditation techniques that allows the mind to go back and see, re-experience things. But even those, they're not set in stone because they're not the full picture. That's what the Buddha is saying. They're just part of the puzzle. After all, this itself is the understanding of the Tathagata, who clearly knows and sees that if anyone attaches oneself to and identifies with any of these premises, it still leads one back into yet another birth, for it surely keeps one trapped within the cyclical becomings of samsara, and without any hopes for an escape beyond it at all. This is at the crux of the problem that the Dhamma comes to heal. This is the disease that people ignore. Trying to go about answering these esoteric questions, let's say, through the means of intellect, or sitting down and arguing, or debating, or looking at books, what other people have said, if it is not looking at the main problem, and which is ending the suffering of samsara, then we simply are taking part in the 62 wrong views, the supernet of wrong views. That's why it's called Brahmajāla, because it captures all those who are stuck in delusion, because the fine mesh of the fisherman's net is going to catch us. because we are not looking at the right in the right way, and that's what Lord Buddha mentions as we go on. I already mentioned it a few times. The six senses, to find an escape, to look for an escape, is so far for most of these people living in the world today who's trying to figure out, why are we here? Where are we going? Where did we come from? All those dumb questions, essentially, that Western philosophers love to ask, but gets us nowhere. Because that questioner is going to keep coming back. That poet is going to keep coming back. That artist is going to come back. Not necessarily in a good state, by the way. Suffering is going to continue because the person has never looked at those five aspects: samudaya, the rising, the falling, the grilling, the asada, the seeking of satisfaction, the danger in that, and the escape from it. That is what this Dhamma provides. That's why there's an escape. All the others don't have one, because you're relying on supplication, like we talked about last week, praying to some God for their grace, for some blessings to come from far, from a different place to you, so your life can become happy or something like that. Or to seek and gain some eternity, or a lengthening of your selfhood into different realms, different states of being. Those are fairy tales. Those have nothing to do with the reality of what is happening, because they all fall into the realms of the 31 realms of existence. They're still cycling through samsara, all these views, because they never ask the right questions. They never look for the right answers, because they're not different types of right answers. There's just one, and that is escape from samsara, escape from suffering. No ifs and buts about that. Now, the Tathagata is truly the one who finally came to clearly understand this for what it really is, as well as directly know and see the very escape from this. As such, there can be no confusion or uncertainty whatsoever in the Tathagata, as it relates to his understanding of this truth, which is why he has indeed quenched his thirst and attained to extinction. That's why you will never find a philosopher who is really contented. Most of them have serious emotional, psychological disorders. Psychologists too. Philosophers too. Not just from our contemporary time period, but even from the past. They had some major, major disorders. Or at the very least, they died unhappy. Even though they might have written libraries of books. Means nothing if they can't reduce a single gram of suffering from their own life. The Buddha did not hypothesize anything. He practiced, and he saw, and he led others to see it for themselves, because he released himself from suffering, as did all those who took his advice, practiced what he was teaching, tested it for themselves, and gained the same result. That's it. No belief, no praying to a Buddha, no rituals. Serious work, understanding and applying sati sampajanya every day of your life in the laboratory called your life, and every other situation that you find yourself in. Responsibly lived life with maturity and understanding and beauty and kindness and love. Therefore, because these are the teachings, the ways of understanding reality, which are extremely deep, truly difficult to comprehend, let alone to penetrate and come to see or appreciate their depth and scope, for they are indeed excellent, so sublimely peaceful, beyond anything the mind could conjure up, utterly transcending the confines of logic. In fact, they are so beautiful in their subtlety that they can only be realized by the wise, that are few. There you go. Now, this itself is what the Tathagata has himself revealed, having realized it through his own direct experiencing and penetrative insight. And he now shares it by introducing and making it known throughout. To this end, anyone who truly and sincerely wishes to pay homage by praising the Tathagata, venerating and offering him accolades properly, would be doing so rightfully, while considering and basing his reverence upon these irrefutable facts. Remember, the sutta began with that Brahmin who was chastising or criticizing Lord Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha. And meanwhile, his own student was defending the triple gem, even though the student was not a follower of the Buddha, but he knew that his own teacher, what he was saying were just nonsense. So the next day, the bhikkhus were discussing what they had witnessed, and they were saying how great it would be to venerate the Buddha, but Lord Buddha made a clear distinction. He said there's the Putujjana way of venerating and paying homage to the Buddha. That is the Putujjana, regular, low-level, mundane level of venerating or paying homage. That's it. So it doesn't penetrate, it doesn't seep into depth of understanding and veneration of the Buddha properly. And why? Why would you want to bow to the Buddha? Why would you want to bow to the teachings? So the Buddha is explaining, as he always does, the right reasons why a person, especially in this case, a person who is able to understand the value of what is wrong view and right view. That's why Lord Buddha is bringing the 62 views, not just to tell us about the wrong views that are out there in the world, but also to clearly demonstrate to us the right reasons why we should pay homage to him. Why pay accolades? Otherwise, don't. If you don't understand why you're venerating, you're just going through the motions, or just being impressed by the level of sila that this teacher has, which Lord Buddha was saying on the 3-tiered level of sila, which we covered also in the first week. So if you are joining us this week, so I recommend you listen to that section as well first. So now we get to what I call the interesting part of wrong views, because you'll see why. The Pali, so this is the 4th section, and this goes from wrong views number 13 to 16. We're almost done with the first 18 groups, if you notice, the ones that deal with the past. So this one is the Amara Vikhe Pavada, the endless ambiguities of eel-wrigglers. Eel-wrigglers, slippery. You will never know, I need to pin you down. What are you saying? If you ever had an argument with an eel-wriggler, they leave you always frustrated because they never show you where they are, what is their position. They always keep changing their position. They go with the mood of the times, with what is acceptable. They're always there. They always are looking, watching what's in, what's out. So they never will lock themselves in a corner by holding a position. That way they will always evade eel-wrigglers. So anyhow, you'll see once Lord Buddha describes them beautifully here. Bhikkhus, there are recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins who come up with endless ambiguities, as they are expert eel-wrigglers. This because when they are asked a question, they keep evading by flip-flopping between their statements to fit the situation, but without making a definitive point about anything. So to support this shiftiness in their eel-wriggling strategies, they use the following 4 premises as their sources or frames of reference. Now, what are these 4 frames of reference used by such recluses and Brahmins as a premise for maintaining their endless ambiguities? Here, bhikkhus, a certain recluse, religious practitioner or Brahmin, unable to distinguish between what is wholesome and what is unwholesome, begins reflecting. I do not know or understand as it truly is, nor am I able to distinguish between that which is wholesome and that which is, in fact, unwholesome. Okay? So if I go ahead and declare a position on this, then given my lack of knowledge or proper understanding on the matter, I might be proven wrong and thus be discovered as being ignorant of the subject. Now, this exposure would be very embarrassing, if not damaging to my reputation, turning into a major obstacle, thereby bringing me much hardship and become a downfall, as well as cause a falling out of favor with so many who respect and trust me. Therefore, Lord Buddha continues, as a result of his dislike and repugnance towards making a categorically false statement or lying, instead he chooses to be vague and ambiguous in his responses. So he simply avoids saying or declaring anything conclusive or intelligible about the differences between that which is wholesome and that which is in fact unwholesome. As such, whenever he is asked a question, he simply resorts to evading tactics by flip-flopping endlessly between his statements to fit the situation, but without making a definitive point about anything. Instead, he goes on declaring, well, actually, I do not put it like this, nor do I claim it to be that way either. And I definitely do not say that it is a combination of both, or put it in a way where it is none of those things either. However, in putting it thus, it does not mean that I am claiming it to be some other way, or that it could somehow neither be this nor that. Do you see the flip-flopping, the eel wriggling? Like, what are you saying? If you sit down today with any modern day, especially celebrity philosopher types, politicians, even psychologists or anybody out there who's talking about research this and that, and you want to read their book, unfortunately, there are some bhikkhus, scholar types also fall into that category, modern day. And you look and you're like, what are you saying? What are you saying? Like, I picked up a book about 10 years ago almost of a famous scholar type bhikkhu, Theravada bhikkhu. It's talking about rebirth and this and that. So that was the title. I get the book and I'm reading, saying the Buddha said this, Buddha said this. However, in this modern age, we cannot make a conclusive statement about these things. So always leaving a door open for alternative way of describing what the Buddha said. Apologetic in the tone. And I'm like, what is this researcher saying vis-a-vis what the Lord Buddha said in regards to rebirth? Because he was unmistakable in his conclusions, the Buddha. But today you have these philosopher types, these so-called gurus that go with the time. Whatever's in, they will talk about that, versus whatever's out, which they will avoid. What is that? I think in politics they call it filibuster. They keep adding, there's just meaningless words, and they say things that you're like, yeah, but that didn't answer my question. And they move on to the next. And next question, please. Eel wrigglers. They existed at the time of the Buddha. They exist now for sure, even amongst us, bhikkhus. And they definitely will exist once we're no longer here. This, therefore, bhikkhus, is the first of 4 premises or frames of references by these expert eel wrigglers who keep evading and flip-flopping between their statements to fit the situation, but without making a definitive point about anything. And what, bhikkhus, is the second frame of reference used by such recluses? Here, bhikkhus, a certain recluse, practitioner of Brahmin, unable to distinguish between what is wholesome and what is unwholesome, begins reflecting. I do not know nor understand as it truly is, nor am I really able to distinguish between that which is wholesome and that which is, in fact, unwholesome. So if I go ahead and declare a position on this, then so it's the same statement. There's fear there. The person is afraid to lose face, essentially, to fall out of favor, essentially, from those, especially out of favor with those individuals who are in positions of power, supporters, etc. And they come up with these tactics. So some time ago in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you had the character Rajneesh or Osho. He was an expert at doing this. He was perfect. He says it in I read some of his books, just to know what's going on here. I mean, the guy was a spiritual guru, but also had 97 or 93 Rolls Royces. I mean, hello, there's something wrong here. But then you read about his beginnings, and he says how he was one of the few people who were in the philosophy program in India, in his university. So there's a competition, that the national competition, I guess. So the university asked their department to send a person to represent the university in this debate, in this panel. They sent him because he would always get in arguments with the professor. Now, in the morning, he participates in a, so it was a pro and con position. So there is a theme. So he represents, I guess, the pro position to defend this premise, this thesis. He, against the whole panel of debaters, he wins. In the afternoon, there's the second phase of the theme or the thesis, where he has to now present the contrary position of the same thing that he defended. Guess what happens? He wins that as well. So he gets the gold medal. Perfect example of an eel wriggler. Perfect. And that's what we have today in the world. What is this Satguru thing that's all these people, Deepak Chopra's going on in the world for decades? Because their flavors will change. The Buddha's teaching never changed. The flavor of the Dhamma is always the same. This is not unique to Buddhism necessarily, but it was unique to the Buddha. This is very important to understand. So we have to question our teachers, including bhikkhus. Anybody who claims to be teaching the Lord Buddha's word, we have to be careful. Simply because they belong to this path, this tradition, does not mean much. We have to investigate, are they really adhering to the word of the Buddha, to the teachings of the Buddha? Or are they flip-flopping? We have many, many flip-floppers in robes today. So this person also, therefore, I go ahead, and if I declare a position on this, then given my knowledge or proper understanding on the matter, I might be proven wrong. So there's a chance that I might be proven wrong. And I might end up saying or doing something that it will put me in a box. Then as a result, I'm paraphrasing here. It's a big paragraph, long paragraph. I might become full of passionate rage, resentment, irritated and livid, finding myself thus trapped and unable to get out. Now, such a predicament would be terrible for me, not to mention very embarrassing, if not damaging to my reputation as well, turning into a major obstacle, thereby bringing me much hardship and a downfall, as well as a cause for falling out of favor with so many who respect and trust me. Hence, as a result of his hesitation and fear of losing control of himself, and thus becoming irritated and filled with a passionate rage while trying to defend his position, if he is caught making a categorical false statement, or even worse, lying, instead, he resorts to being vague and ambiguous in his responses. Look how beautifully Lord Buddha presents the human aspect of things. He's describing the inner state of mind of such a person who's empty, who's basically functioning from a place of fear, embarrassment, and losing control. I was in Sri Lanka once, and a teacher that I had agreed to be an attendant to had been given the respectful, honorable position to be among a panel of bhikkhus in a temple, which had almost like a stage. So he was also there. And they said, Bhante Venerable, we only have about 15 minutes. Others are actually getting 5, just to say a few words of blessings to the public here. We'll give you 15. How about that? And he said, okay, I think I might need more, he says, but they thought he was joking. He kept on talking. 15 became 30, 30 became 40. They're coming and asking me, could you please tell the Venerable to stop? And he was unhappy. There was a big scene. He pushed and slammed the mic away in front of hundreds of people sitting there. And there's a Bhikkhu panel over there. It was beyond embarrassing, you can imagine. But we had to, calm things down in a sense, but it was a very unbecoming of anyone, let alone someone in robes, let alone a teacher, let alone a Mahatera. It was terrible. But these are things that Lord Buddha was warning us against, because that went against everything that he was talking about. Metta. Not a single iota of metta. You can't even look for it with a flashlight, a laser beam in daylight, looking for that kind of a metta. Where? So when we read these suttas, please do not think of these as being, yeah, but they are from outdated times. They're very antiquated. These don't occur today, Bhante. No, that's why I'm sharing these snippets of factual, actual experiences I have undergone and I have witnessed. That these are not antiquated, these are factual. Lord Buddha was talking about our time as well. And if you notice, I didn't say anything about other religions. I'm just talking about bhikkhus, right? Not even other denominations of Buddhism. So this is not a sutta about other faiths, other wrong views. No, the wrong view comes from the person, including those who are claiming to be practicing the word of the Buddha. So that's a warning for us, so that we don't fall into that category of irregulars. Hence, as a result of his hesitation and fear of losing control and thus becoming irritated and filled with a passionate rage while trying to defend his position, if he is caught making a categorically false statement, or even worse, lying, instead, he resorts to being vague and ambiguous in his responses. So he simply avoids saying or declaring anything conclusive or intelligible about the differences between that which is wholesome and that which is, in fact, unwholesome. As such, whenever he is asked a question, he simply resorts to evading tactics by flip-flopping endlessly between his statements to fit the situation, but without making a definitive point about anything. Instead, he goes on declaring, well, actually, I do not put it like this, nor do I claim it to be that way either. And I definitely do not say that it is a combination of both, or put it in a way where it is none of those things either. However, in putting it thus, it does not mean that I am claiming it to be some other way, or that it could somehow neither be this nor that. Just reading that paragraph makes one lose a few neurons, because it's so ridiculously stupid, but people fall for this. We respect and honor individuals who speak these words today. I mean, the person gets up and makes pedophiliac behaviors, statements in broad daylight in front of cameras. A Buddhist monk, supposedly. And everybody dismisses it the next day. Oh, he didn't mean like, oh, it's a cultural thing. It's like, no. No one would allow your neighbor to say those things and still walk. They will put him behind bars. So this also is reflecting today's society's hypocrisy in having a stance, saying this is acceptable, this is absolutely unacceptable. we're also wishy-washy. If we have wishy-washy characters in our lives, that means we are wishy-washy. We are not holding our ground. Similarly with the relationships that we have in people that we have in our lives. If we have shady characters in our lives and we tolerate them, then that means that there's aspects of that shadiness in us. We are not being truthful to us and to life. So something has to be done there. Truth has to be brought back. And Dhamma is truth. It's unmistakable. It's not wishy-washy. The Dhamma is never flip-flopping. You never, ever see the Buddha saying one thing and anywhere in the suttas find something that he says that's contrary to that. It's always the same. Especially when you look at the context. This, therefore, bhikkhus, is the second of 4 premises or frames. And what bhikkhus is the third? Here, bhikkhus, a certain recluse, religious practitioner, Brahmin, unable to distinguish between what is wholesome and what is unwholesome, begins reflecting. I do not know or understand as it truly is, nor am I able to distinguish between what is wholesome and from that which is not. But if I were to go ahead and declare a position on this, despite my obvious lack of knowledge and proper understanding on the matter, by stating this behavior or situation is wholesome, or that behavior or situation is unwholesome, then there's always the possibility that I may be proven wrong by others. After all, there might very well be other recluses, religious practitioners, or Brahmins who are wise or erudite and more knowledgeable than myself, who are experts on rhetorical devices and argumentation, and can easily tear up the doctrines and philosophies of others by picking them apart, who may decide to confront and challenge me on the statement I made. In such a situation, if they cross-question me, then they could easily grill me with their refutations, which would truly be a disaster, as it would completely ruin me. This because, other than being totally embarrassing, it would surely damage my reputation and therefore turn into a major obstacle, bringing me much hardship and a downfall, as well as a cause for falling out of favor with so many who respect and trust me. I would lose face. Who knows where that will lead me? I will lose this temple. I will lose that property. I will lose that territory. The prime minister, the queen, or the king, or the whatever is not going to invite me to their palace. I will become a person non grata. So I might as well either completely shut my mouth or say things in a very vague way. Basically, New Age lingo. All these spiritual gurus that can talk about any subject and you're like, yeah, that was great, but what did he say? Could you tell me? Yeah, it was just beautiful. It was just very inspiring. What did he say? They're clueless. But it made you feel good. That's what we go by. Remember, wrong views are not just intellectual undertakings, exercises. They are based on how we feel. So the views themselves are covering up, hiding feelings underneath that are the products of contact. We're dealing with just plain old beings who have strong attachment to conceit and a sense of self. And they want to defend that because they feel a certain way. And the view itself is going to protect that view because everybody's afraid of dying in one way or the other. So it's a pitiful thing. It's almost like a child, inexperienced person who's trying to defend themselves. They're throwing all these different ideas out. The problem is that they're not children. They're controlling the views and lives of billions of people throughout history, endless number of people, actually. Hence, as a result of his hesitation and fear of being cross-questioned and grilled by other experts, in being forced to defend his position, if caught making a wrong declaration, He therefore resorts to being vague and ambiguous in his responses. So he simply avoids saying or claiming anything conclusive or intelligible about the differences between that which is wholesome and that which is in fact unwholesome. As such, whenever he is asked a question, he simply resorts to evading tactics by flip-flopping endlessly between his statements, but without making a definitive point about anything. Instead, he goes on declaring, well, actually, I do not put it like this. So basically the same sentence, because irregulars, at least they stick to one thing, no matter their variety. They will never give you a straight answer. In fact, there's no answer. That's it. That's but because they use a lot of words, they will confuse the questioner. Unless the questioner is able, is probably has the mind of a chess player, a very good, excellent chess player, who's able to follow the moves and still have the thread of what was the original question. That still doesn't answer my question, sir. Okay, that has to be there, because these are like also, they're very charming in many ways. They're using so many nonverbal communication tools. And they're also very condescending at times, because if nothing works, they will start yelling at the questioner. I've been present to on retreats where people have done that to the questioner who was asking a legitimate question, very legitimate, respectfully, by the way. And this person, the one who was supposed to know the answer and supposed to answer at least, shot the person down with insults and became very confrontational. And that was very embarrassing again. So when the irregular can't get out, they will use other strategies. Be mindful of that as well. This, therefore, because is the third of four premises. And what because is the fourth frame of reference used by such recluses to flip-flop between their statements. Further, because there is the case of a certain recluse, religious practitioner or Brahmin, who is dull-witted and below average in his thinking and reasoning abilities. Then, due to his intellectual ineptitude, whenever someone asks him a clear-cut question so to know and identify his position on a matter, instead of giving them the expected clear-cut answer, he always gives them the runaround by flip-flopping endlessly and evading their questions, meanwhile providing not even a single rationally sound or coherent response. Therefore, when he is asked the following questions, he keeps shifting through his replies one after another thus. You know, I go through numbers here. There's 16 of them. If you were to ask me whether there is another world somewhere, I would then say yes and agree with you. This is them. This is the person. Or whether there isn't another world somewhere, I would then say yes and agree with you. Or whether there is or there isn't another world somewhere, I would then say yes and agree with you. Or whether there neither is nor there isn't another world somewhere, I would still then agree with you and say yes. Or whether there are beings that are spontaneously born, I would then say yes and agree with you. Or whether there are no such beings that are spontaneously born, to which again I would say yes and agree with you. Or whether there both are and are not beings that are spontaneously born, I would still say yes and agree with you. Or whether there neither are nor there aren't beings that are spontaneously born, again I will say yes and agree with you. And if you ask me whether there are indeed fruits or results as consequences of good and evil actions, I would agree with you and say yes. Or whether there are no fruits or results whatsoever or consequences of good and evil actions, to which I would again say yes and agree with you. Or whether there both are and are not any fruits or results of consequences of good actions and evil actions, and there too I would agree with you and say yes. Or whether there neither are nor aren't any fruits or double negative as consequences of good and evil actions, in which I would again agree with you and say yes. And if you ask me as to whether the Tathagata exists somewhere after his death, then I would still agree with you and say yes. Or when you ask whether the Tathagata does not exist after his death, then I would agree with you again and say yes. Or whether the Tathagata both exists and does not exist after his death, then I would agree with you. Or when you ask whether the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after his death, then I would again agree with you and say yes. 16 different positions. By the way, Lord Buddha, most of, especially the 10 out of these, the Buddha put them aside. He says these will not help in any way, shape, or form to reduce suffering. These are just, but in the case of such a person, he's saying, I agree with you. Yes, yes, yeah, yes to that one too. Yes to that one too. However, friends, in providing you my answers, this is him continuing, by the way, you must know that I do not put it like this, nor do I claim it to be that way either. And I definitely do not say that it is a combination of both, or put it in a way where it is none of those things either. However, in putting it thus, it does not mean that I am claiming it to be some other way, or that it could somehow neither be this nor that. So basically, it is completely groundless. It is wall-less. There's nothing. There's no wonder Lord Buddha calls this person the dull-witted one. This, therefore, bhikkhus, is the fourth of 4 premises or frames of reference used by such recluses to flip-flop between their statements to support their shiftiness in their eel-wriggling strategies, while they evade and flip-flop endlessly between their answers without providing the questioner a single coherent or intelligible response. Therefore, whatever recluses, religious practitioners, or Brahmins who are ambiguous in their replies, coming up with endless evasive maneuvers to maintain the shiftiness of their position, all such characters would be using or relying on one or another of these 4 premises as their sources or frames of reference. That is so because outside of these 4 frames of reference, there can be none. After all, this itself is the understanding of the Tathagata, who clearly knows and sees that if anyone attaches oneself to and identifies with any one of these premises, it still leads one back into yet another birth, for it surely keeps one trapped within the cyclical becomings of samsara, and without any hopes for an escape beyond it at all. Now, the Tathagata is truly the one who finally came to clearly understand this for what it really is, as well as directly know and see the very escape from this. As such, there can be no confusion or uncertainty whatsoever in the Tathagata, as it relates to his understanding of this truth, which is why he has indeed quenched his thirst and attained to extinction. Thus, by fully comprehending the whole process of arising, of falling away, and of disappearing, of the constant pursuit of gratification, the danger that it brings, and especially the very escape from all kinds of feelings, the Tathagata has truly attained to ultimate freedom by entirely giving up all grabbing with its tenacious tendency to hold on. Did you see that? He is bringing everything that was said and bringing it to that bottleneck reality of feeling, which oftentimes we ignore to consider. We never give credence or import to the fact that there is this person talking. We just talked about the eel wrigglers, yeah, right? But the eel wriggler still has feelings. They're having a certain feeling which they want to protect, which now they're using the brain, the mind, whatever they have been exposed to, intellectual, this and that, whatever it is. They're using all those strategies and techniques and tools and weaponry to protect what they feel strongly about. Do you see that? And it all starts with contact, because the person is still stuck on that loop of 5, because the person has not realized that whatever arises will fall. Samudaya, arising. Craving is keeping on looping us through different experiences, but we want to maintain a certain feeling. We want to maintain a certain feeling versus other feelings. And we want to defend ourselves. We want to perpetuate that pleasant feeling. all of which perpetuates our existence in ignorance. So all these views then become tools and ways for us to secure membership in having more, is to secure our presence or to elongate, to perpetuate that state of pleasant feeling that we're experiencing, whatever it brings with it. For example, if you're having these views like Nigantanataputta, giant leader Mahavir, and others, each of whom has their own wrong views, their views were protecting them, but also was bringing to them prestige. So it was bringing them a lot more of that feel-good feeling, the state that they wanted to preserve, while at the same time perpetuating lies that they are, liberated ones. Meanwhile, they're full of rage. They're full of anger. They're full of jealousy. They're full of hatred. So the view is a cover. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a camouflage. The Buddha exposes this. And this was one of the reasons why I wanted to venture, because there's a reason I kept on thinking to myself for decades, I didn't want to touch the sutta because it is so intimidating. Because I'm not interested in looking up at what people viewed, especially wrong views. How's that going to help me? That was the thing. But at the same time, the deterring thing for me, not to want to get into it, let alone translate it, let alone to explore it with a class, with group of meditators. Why? I asked, why did the elders in the first council, why did Venerable Mahakassapa, Venerable Ananda, and others, why did they choose to place Brahmajāla as number one in the long discourses group of 34 long discourses? Why this one? There's got to be a reason. But all the commentaries, everything that I had read, everything that I had heard and was taught, we're saying something else. Until I delve deeper, with the help of obviously the wonderful, amazing work of late Venerable Katukurunde Nyanananda, Bhante Nyanananda. Made sense, finally. And you see, yes, he's talking about feeling. Because these empty-headed thinkers, a wrong view, they still had feelings that they were defending. I think I belong there with them, don't I? Because I have feelings. Yeah, let's explore that. So this is not about other people's wrong views over there. Do you see? And then it opens up. It is a key that opens up the rest of the 34 suttas. Wow, that's why I wanted to put more energy and finish it and last year, and then we're doing it, because it's such a special sutta. So I hope you feel about it the way that I do. Okay, so let's continue. Thus, by fully comprehending the whole process of arising, of falling away, and disappearing in constant pursuit of gratification, the dangers that it brings, and especially the very escape from all kinds of feelings, the Tathagata has truly attained to ultimate freedom by entirely giving up all grabbing, upadana, grabbing and holding on tenaciously. Therefore, bhikkhus, these are the teachings, the ways of understanding reality, which are extremely deep, truly difficult to comprehend, let alone to penetrate and come to see or appreciate their depth and scope. For they are indeed excellent, so sublimely peaceful, beyond anything the mind could conjure up, utterly transcending the confines of logic. In fact, they are so beautiful in their subtlety that they can only be realized by the wise that are few. Now, this itself is what the Tathagata has himself revealed, having realized it through his own direct experience and penetrative insight. And he now shares it by introducing and making it known throughout. To this end, anyone who truly and sincerely wishes to pay homage by praising the Tathagata, venerating and offering him accolades properly, would be doing so rightfully while considering and basing his reverence upon these irrefutable facts. If you notice, this is almost like a refrain. that I do want to read, but it's repeated after every single group of 4 wrong views that we've gone over, because Lord Buddha is basically putting his seal of Tathagata approval on what he just said and reconfirming the importance of the Dhamma as the way out, of suffering. The views will not carry us out of suffering. And it's not a reference to some other time in the future. If we're following the simple mechanism of the 4 Noble Truths, then we can experience suffering, the release from suffering even now. Because it all has to do with our grabbing and tenaciously onto something, an expectation. The moment we let go, suffering is gone. It could be something as a headache, simple as a headache, or it could be some major socially charged, major issue, difficulty, loss of a job, loss of a this, or health. The world will not end if I continue having this. And there's this thing called anicca. Whatever arises, this headache arose because of the right conditions. If I didn't have a head, I wouldn't have a headache. If I weren't alive, I wouldn't have a headache. Okay, so we can work with that. So now I separated myself. It's no longer me who's experiencing the headache. Well, how could this happen to me? It shouldn't happen. Whoa. That is me clinging tenaciously on a certain outcome and fighting, because there's also dosa, there's hatred and aversion in me, there's ill will in me. I am angry. I am full of hatred. Okay. I'm grabbing. Okay. Breathe. Do other people have headaches? Yes. Okay, maybe it was too cold and I didn't have my beanie, my hat on. Maybe. Now because I have a head and it was cold, I'm experiencing the headache. End of story. Is it going to stay there forever? No. Worst comes to worst, go get a headache medicine. Drink some water. Close your eyes. Try to lay down and sleep a little bit. What am I doing? I'm letting go. I'm releasing my firm grip on a certain outcome. No, I want it gone now. No. It will go. Anicca, it arose, it will go away. Oh, really? Yeah. That is Nirodha. Because the gripping of tenaciously of that outcome was the real dukkha. That's why we keep coming back, because at the end of life, we're grabbing with both hands and feet and teeth anything we can get our hands on to simply make sure that there's a repeat of life. There's a craving. We're so hungry for, a little bit more. Can I have one extra day? No, you're dead. You're going now. Okay, let me, I wish I could have another life. Okay. That link, that desire link, the constant search for more, the hook that we throw is what brings us back. Nobody else. It's our own desire to re-experience in our stupidity, in our unwillingness to look at the whole picture. And that's what Lord Buddha is presenting here, the escape. But you have to, in order for you to get to the escape, you have to see the danger in following that mechanistic way of living. The danger has to be seen. The perils of that has to be seen, that if I keep seeking and running and pursuing this gratification that never really arrives, if I keep doing that, I'm going to keep wasting my life, and I'm disappointed every single time. It's painful. That's danger. That's peril. And eventually, the person, once it gets through their thick skull, through their thick head, they become disenchanted by this whole thing. They will start saying, oh, how many relationships did I go through in this life? Just this last decade? Oh boy. Am I really satisfied? No. I ran after these things. Yeah, but did I get satisfaction, gratification? No. Oh boy. So the next batch of pursuits will result in the same way? Yes. Oh, that drives a person to become disenchanted. And now, if they have the right wisdom, they will say, is there a way out? Already you are nearing the category of beings there that Lord Buddha is calling wise, because you're going outside of Putujjana land, the regular, mundane, ordinary, worldling, thick, dense-headed Putujjana, and you're going towards release. And you're realizing how much responsibility you have in your own happiness. You have. Oh, now you start developing your wings of maturity, understanding, oh, okay. This is then direct experiencing. The fifth, wrong views 17 to 18. These are only two, if you noticed. Adicca Samuppannavada, origination by chance, arbitrary, like chaos theory. In the early 20th century, they started this nonsensical school of thought, chaos theory, which to this day is very strong. The way things are done, and science is taught, humanities are taught, politics are run. The world is run on, basically. Many of it is, just based on chaos, or it's by chance. There's no purpose to life, that kind of jazz. Lord Buddha talks about that as well. So these are wrong views number 17 and 18. Furthermore, bhikkhus, there are recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins who assert and believe in the premise that existence or the cosmos, as well as the self, arose or came about simply by chance, claiming them to have accidentally originated and therefore a happenstance. So, to point out the serendipitous manifestation of existence and the self, they use the following two premises as their sources or frames of reference. Now, what are these two frames of reference? There is, bhikkhus, a category of devas with the inability to perceive, hence they are called non-percipient gods. But after having spent their long lifespans in that non-percipient world, once a long period of time has passed, the moment comes when perception does arise in them, at which point they die and fall away from the plane of existence and the company of other devas in that realm. And then it so occurs that one or more of these beings, in falling away from their divine state, find themselves reborn into the human realm. Later in time, one such human being decides to go forth as he walks off from home life into homelessness. Then, through his diligent effort and with persistent resoluteness, he engages in meditation practice by focusing his attention and becoming well concentrated. Thus, he attains to a level of concentration that settles his heart into a state of collectedness, whereby he is then able to remember and recollect the very moment that perception arose in him, but while recalling none of the details about his existence prior to becoming percipient. Again, they only are seeing a portion of the picture of reality. Sometime later, as a result of this discovery through his recollections of the moment he became percipient of himself and the existence, he makes the following assertion. Truly, the self and existence manifest serendipitously and thus originate accidentally. And why do I say this? It is because there was a time when I did not exist. And then I remember the moment when suddenly and just by chance I sprang into being and began existing. Just like that. This then, because is the first of two premises or frames of reference that some recluses claim that existence and self are accidentally originated. And what is the second frame of reference, bhikkhus? Bhikkhus, a certain recluse, religious practitioner, or Brahmin, through the application of his rational thinking, reasons out by logical means as he reaches a conclusion, as a result of a series of exhaustive investigations of himself and the world. Given his deductions from the logical examinations gathered, he then comes out with a declaration. Truly, the self and existence manifest serendipitously and thus originate accidentally. This, therefore, bhikkhus, is the second of two premises or frames of reference that some recluses use while asserting that existence or the cosmos, as well as the self, arose or came about simply by chance, accidentally originated. Therefore, bhikkhus, whatever recluses, religious practitioners, or Brahmins who assert and believe in the premise of that existence or the cosmos, as well as the self, arose by chance, they all would be using or relying on one or the other of these two premises as their sources or frames of reference. Today's many modern-day scientists, astronomers, for example, they might easily fall, one would say, justifiably, into the second category of these thinkers. Because they believe so much in the exhaustive analysis of, let's say, photographs from NASA, from telescopes, from this and that, their own calculations. But again, it's a snippet of real experience. After all, this itself is the understanding of the Tathagata, who clearly knows and sees that if anyone attaches oneself to and identifies with any one of these premises, it still leads one back into yet another birth, where it surely keeps one trapped within the cyclical becomings of samsara, and without any hopes for an escape beyond it at all. Even seeking world peace, finding the best cure for this or that, finding a cure for immortal or for death, even if one would be able to do that, or harmony between nations or something. That's great and dandy, but will the person eventually really face suffering? There will not be a cure for death. You can extend it. That's what they're talking about. That's what they're working on, to extend human life. Okay. Every loved one is going to die in your life. You know that. The world is going to change. And what kind of a life is it that you're going to have? Really, the quality of life. Or will you be happy? So nobody's answering, okay, once there's world peace, afterwards, am I going to die? Yes. And if I'm really fortunate, I'm going to come back as a human being. Okay. And do I have to go through the same mangler again, the food processor again, the slaughterhouse again? Yes, yes, and yes. So why am I happy about world peace or this or that? I have to do the work, because all these are distractions. Distractions. Because at the end of my life, I am realizing that I have not reached that stable place of happiness that's unshakable. And that's what the Buddha is offering through the Dhamma. There's no postponing of anything. There's no delaying of anything. Therefore, because these are the teachings, the ways of understanding reality, which are extremely deep, truly difficult to comprehend, let alone to penetrate, only to be realized by the wise that are few. Now, this itself is what the Tathagata has himself revealed, having realized it through his own direct experiencing and penetrative insight, and he now shares it by introducing and making it known throughout. To this end, anyone who truly and sincerely wishes to pay homage by praising the Tathagata, venerating and offering him accolades properly, would be doing so rightfully while considering and basing his reverence upon these irrefutable facts. These, therefore, bhikkhus, are the 18 premises or frames of reference which are used by recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins who engage in speculative thinking as they theorize and make their assumptions about the past. To this end, they support such claims by basing them upon these 18 premises, which they use as their sources or frames of reference mentioned. That is so, because outside of these 18 frames of reference, there can be none. After all, this itself is the understanding of the Tathagata, who clearly knows and sees that if anyone attaches oneself to and identifies with any one of these premises, it still leads one back to yet another birth, for it surely keeps one trapped within the cyclical becomings of samsara, without any hopes for an escape beyond it at all. Now, the Tathagata is truly the one who finally came to clearly understand this for what it really is, as well as directly know and see the very escape from this. As such, there can be no confusion or uncertainty whatsoever in the Tathagata as it relates to his understanding of this truth, which is why he has indeed quenched his thirst and attained to extinction. You cannot quench your thirst or attain to extinction through speculation. By hanging out with certain people who think like you. There's no speculation involved in awakening. It's real. And it is to be realized by oneself directly. You can't, if you read on it, you're simply reading about it. You have to do the work for yourself. The very first steps basically include you at least asking the right questions. Am I on the right path? Look how much clarity there is in the Buddha's statements. There's no confusion. He's complete, he's categorical. That's why I kept saying while touring around the world in Dhamma talks, I would say if the Tathagata were to be present today, if he would show up today, he would be very much unliked. He would be refused access. He would be turned away by people, by Buddhists, by temples, by individuals, because he's so categorical, he's so clear with things that need clarity. What is damaging, Bhante? He will tell you what is damaging, what is unwholesome, from what is wholesome, from what is really beneficial to us. And that's what Lord Buddha is clarifying here. Thus, by fully comprehending the whole process of arising, of falling away, and of disappearing, of the constant pursuit of gratification, the dangers that it brings, and especially the very escape from all kinds of feelings, the Tathagata has truly attained to ultimate freedom by entirely giving up all grabbing with its tenacious tendency to hold on. Therefore, because these are the teachings, the ways of understanding reality, which are extremely deep, truly difficult to comprehend, let alone to penetrate and come to see or appreciate their depth and scope. For they are indeed excellent, so sublimely peaceful, beyond anything the mind could conjure up, utterly transcending the confines of logic. In fact, they are so beautiful in their subtlety that they can only be realized by the wise that are few. Now, this itself is what the Tathagata has himself revealed, having realized it through his own direct experiencing and penetrative insight. And he now shares it by introducing and making it known throughout. To this end, anyone who truly and sincerely wishes to pay homage by praising the Tathagata, venerating and offering him accolades properly, would be doing so rightfully, while considering and basing his reverence upon these irrefutable facts. We'll stop here. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Next week, we will continue from the Aparantakapika, assumptions and beliefs about the ultimate end. So that will be the other 44 views that deal with the future. So we dealt with the past with the 18 wrong views. So the 44 on a mundane level, you might be glad to know that the sections of these views will be shorter. So to cover. So we'll move faster through those views as we get closer and closer to completing the sutta, this wonderful sutta. So I will stop here and open up for any questions you might have, thoughts. Yes, Chitta.
Hello, Bhante.
Mm.
There was a time during the talk where it became obvious that, well, to me at least, my perception of it was the reason why these views are wrong is because nobody's actually looking at paticca samuppada, like dependent origination. It, no matter whether somebody's saying part truth or like it's because it's almost irrelevant what they're actually saying. They're coming at it incorrect. And I started observing you as such while I was listening to what you were saying. And I felt like I dropped into a part of a like contact almost. What was at one point you just started being this like image on the screen, and I could see, okay, this is just like my perception of what was Bhante is like just like falling away here. And then obviously I started coming out with that a little bit, and then I started being aware that actually, okay, this is Bhante, like, but it's a perception. I was struggling to maintain my focus on the talk actually, but I thought, no, actually, this is maybe more useful at this point in time. And I started like playing around with my perception of you. You know, it felt almost as if like the computer screen was like a portal to you. Is that, do you know when you're playing around with perception like that, is that actually useful? It felt like it was.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Or is it better to try and almost drop back further into the contact of it?
Before we proceed, you said actually, it felt like it was.
Mm,
You just ended that sentence. You said it felt like it was.
mm.
Could you clarify what you meant?
Okay, that was a weak statement. It actually was. I know that it was useful. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Mm.
And my question then would be why? Why did it feel useful?
Ah, okay.
No.
Do you want me to, do you want to
Yeah,
give my, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Because it was showing me like reality really, like the way that perception is maybe not impermanent and not it's nothing that we can be that can be trusted really. You know, this isn't a portal to you. It felt like as if there was a little I mean this respectfully, as if there was like a little Bhante like inside of this like portal, you know. So it couldn't be trusted. So yeah, it felt like it was a nice experience.
Hmm. Paticca Samuppada is through and through seen in the sutta. Again, something that people, commentators especially, completely missed in describing what this sutta is all about for centuries. And here you are in the 21st century saying, Bhante, it's almost like, was I seeing Paticca Samuppada? Yes. The view is simply camouflage. It's a fog. It's a mist that has nothing to do with what's really going on underneath, which is contact being made through the six sense doors, which they're completely oblivious of. And that's registering. There's a feeling that comes out of the contact, right? Whether it is a sight that they saw, a sound they heard, a smell they detected, sensed, a taste they detected, sensed, body contact they detected or sensed, or a thought that they cognized, an idea. It is giving them a certain feeling. A mental feeling is being registered somewhere, and then the person is becoming attached to that. To them, now they have to find ways to justify their feeling without talking about the feeling. This is how cults begin. This is how philosophies show up. This is basically the person is ready to go to war to defend that. Not the theory, not the thought, not the view, the feeling underneath. Eventually, you can even take that all the way to the end of one's life at that moment where the hookup is happening to the next life. They're tossing the lasso to the next life. That's where it leads. That misunderstanding, that ignorance, that's ignorance. But just to get a snippet of an understanding that says, wait a minute, do I have any control over this? If I give it a little bit more depth of analysis, just to let's look at this carefully. Could I then bring this theory down to earth, keep whatever is useful in it to my life so that I can gain a better understanding, so I don't keep myself in suffering? Because that's what it is. And these 62 views completely miss out on that. So if the person had a snippet of Paticcasamuppada occurring in the mind, they would say, who cares about these views? Tell me about how I can avoid getting into the cyclical, repetitive, torturous hamster wheel of coming back into new relationships, new lives, and new life forms again and again and again, and start anew. Because I will not remember any of this. And it will be like, oh, wow, this is great. No. You just wasted that life and you're about to lose this. So this is one of the reasons why when a person comes to the Dhamma, it has to be very protected. It's like that candle that's so faint and there's a strong wind. You have to protect it. But there's so much turbulence, so many different sources of tornadoes and hurricanes and things like that coming to, and water, showers, to just blow out this candle. Meaning the interest in the Dhamma to ask questions. And that's why only the wise can withstand the torrential rain of all these influences, all these wrong views, and still continue on the path. Still continue and not go into wrong views, which we have a lot of. Paticcasamuppada is not seeing a series of lights when you're deep in contemplation. It's not seeing flickers and say, oh yes, I've seen Paticcasamuppada. I would go like this, like, how could you, like, where do you see this in the sutta? Where? Show me where, one place. But people believe that's Paticcasamuppada. No. Wisdom is transformative. You become a different person. Really. You don't lose your humanity. You grow in your humanity. You become wondrous. You become a breath of fresh air. You can carry the whole entire cosmos on your shoulders and in your heart. That's metta. That's penetrative insight. That's really tasting the Dhamma, seeing the Dhamma, because the person is no longer the same. And they don't need other people to keep telling them that so that they can believe, oh yeah, I must be. No. Am I anagami? Am I an arahant? I must be an arahant because he says so. No. Seeing Paticcasamuppada unfold, just looking at the feeling aspect and seeing where that leads us. Because feeling is not just feeling, just one feeling. It's constantly changing, constantly changing. And this is why sati has to be there, because we have to move fast. This is key. Your sati has to be sharp. It has to be very quick. This is one of the reasons why I highly encourage using walking meditation, especially the transitional points between different postures as you're moving in and out of a posture. Even if that posture is not described exactly the way you live your life, like let's say getting up from your bed moving the covers over and sliding your feet onto the ground, bending your knees so that now your feet are hanging from the edge of the bed, let's say. So many moments have taken place. Where were you as far as awareness of each of those treasure troves of experience goes? So Dhamma will never leave you when you are constantly with sati and sampajanya, with full awareness. And I will tell you this, more people have attained while being in such a dynamic state than they did when they were just sitting. Let alone sitting for hours or days, and moss was growing on them. You can be an excellent sloth, does say nothing. There has to be understanding, deepening of understanding. So yes, that is every experience, including seeing another person on the camera on your screen, but not being taken with just that story. You're still digesting the Dhamma, but you're using your living experience. I wouldn't call that separate. I wouldn't call that even minor. That's big. Take that into the rest of your life, especially in relation to what is going on in you, in your mind, in your body, in your heart, in your feelings, and less on what's happening outside. But we use the outside as a stepping stone. Good question. Any other thoughts, questions? Let's see. Okay. Let's transfer some merits. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu lokasasanam. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu desanam. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May your practice continuously grow. May your life be exceedingly fruitful in moment to moment realizations, direct experiencing of the Dhamma on a deeper and deeper level, more so than it was previously, where it becomes alive, where you don't need to look outside of yourself for proof that it works, that it is true, that it is sublime. And you don't have to tell yourself anything. Just know it, because you're seeing it. Yatha bhutang pajanati. You're seeing things as they come to be. You're seeing the connections, contact, feeling, tendency to grab, the liking, craving coming in, always seducing you, always trying to say, don't, let's go there, let's go there, let's go there, let's go there. No mind this, let's go there. And becoming disenchanted is crucial to look for a way out. It's like that image that I shared with you, I think, last week, where I wanted out of that casino when I was 21, and I felt trapped. I couldn't find a way out of that casino because there were no exit signs. I was completely upset, disenchanted, of course, dispassionate. Nothing I would see, my eyes would capture, the smells would be intriguing enough to keep me there. Everything was artificial, everything was a lie. So when there's that understanding, even feelings, emotionality, ideas, this and that, like you want out. That is disgust. That is actually dispassion, viraga, which is essential to understanding the Dhamma. So may that grow in you. And may the blessings of the Triple Gem be with you. May you be protected, prosperous, healthy, and resilient in your diligence in practicing, making the most of this rare life that you have. as a human being coming to practice and learn the Dhamma. Until next week, Sukhi Hotu.